RH, quer saber como voar no trabalho? É só usar a Flash. Com a Flash, você concentra toda a gestão de pessoas em um único lugar. Faça a admissão dos colaboradores e solicite mais de 8 categorias de benefícios. Ah, e você ainda pode fazer todo o controle de ponto. Conheça o novo onboarding integrado da Flash em flashapp.com.br.
Well, what started out looking like a red wave turned more into, let's say, a red dawn, followed by solidly blue skies in our ever-purple state. But with so many different ways to vote, this week has been, let's say, dynamic. Today on CityCast Las Vegas, we're taking a shot at simplifying our election madness with my co-host Sarah Lohman and political reporter Steve Sebelius. We're going to cover what it'll take to cure some outstanding election ballots and what they might have been sick from, the updates and the updates still to come, and an overshadowed race in Henderson where local kids finally elected the best ice cream flavor of all time. It's Friday, November 8th. I'm Dayvid Figler, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Sarah and Steve, thanks for being here.
Good morning, Dayvid.
Great to be here.
I want to jump into it, especially with you, Steve. So you actually got to interview President Trump during the campaign cycle. As we look back, any reflections on that interview now?
First of all, it was great to do that. I've been trying to do that for a long time, and I like to interview as many of the candidates as possible. Interestingly enough, I interviewed Joe Biden in 2007. He later joined a ticket that won Nevada and won the popular vote. I interviewed Hillary Clinton in 2016. She went on to win Nevada and win the popular vote. I interviewed Joe Biden again in 2020. He won Nevada, won the popular vote. And again here, 2024, interviewed Donald Trump. He won Nevada and he won the popular vote. So clearly, there is a connection there. I know, Dayvid, you are going to tell me that post hoc ergo propter hoc, but let's set that aside for a moment.
I was going to actually say res ipsa loquitur. Eventually a brick falls on everybody's head.
But it's interesting because Kamala Harris did not do an interview. And she did interviews with local reporters in other swing states, but not here in Nevada. And I'm, in all seriousness, not saying that, her lack of doing an interview led to her not winning. But I will say this, coming to a swing state and going to rallies and giving what is essentially the same speech over and over and over again will excite the base, but it doesn't expand the base. And I think that's one of the problems that she faced in Nevada.
Just really briefly reflecting back on your interview with President Trump, knowing what we know now, do you think that there was anything in your interview with him that particularly resonated with the locals?
Yes. And as always, whenever we have a candidate like that, we focus on local issues because, what they're going to do for local Las Vegans is the focus at Channel 13. And it's my focus. I'm not going to ask about foreign policy and other issues. I want to know what they're going to do for Las Vegas, for Nevada. And in his case, he did focus on his no tax on tips, his no tax on overtime, and his no tax on Social Security, all of which were very salient for residents here. We have a lot of tipped workers. We have a lot of time card workers who get overtime, and we have a lot of retirees. And so all of that, I think, really resonated with people.
Honestly, what I remember from your interview, Steve, is that you did a great job pushing back, but that Trump didn't understand what tariffs were,
Right.
which is something I do want from a leader. I though appreciate this expert analysis. I don't think you're, of course, you're not wrong, Steve, but it's painful. And I often do feel that women get analyzed differently than men, clearly. And I don't know if we'll see a female president in my lifetime, no matter how qualified she might be.
Well, you know what? I am happy to disagree with you on that because
That'd be nice.
I mean, you cannot separate that. That is baked in, and anybody who denies that is denying reality.
Yeah.
And I think you even saw the Democrats realize that. President Obama was saying to men, hey, listen, get over it. If you don't feel like you can vote for somebody just because she's a woman, you need to get over that. It didn't work.
Yeah.
But he was right. His message is right. I wonder if this race had been Nikki Haley versus Kamala Harris, how different it might have been.
That would be interesting.
But I do believe firmly, and we're here in the state of Nevada where we have a female majority state legislature, the first in the country. We have a female majority on the Supreme Court. Our biggest cities are led all by women, but we have never elected a woman as governor. And this country has never elected a woman as president. But everything seems insurmountable until it happens. And I believe in our lifetime that will happen. And I'm a lot older than you. So the timeline is shorter than you might think.
It's a bet that I don't want to win against you, Steve. That we get a female president before you die. But you know what? I'll take that bet. I will show up to our funerals.
Okay, well, let's jump into the week because there's still some energy from the election flowing over, especially with over 10,000 mail ballots that still need verification. Sarah, what's that all about?
Yeah, so there are a bunch of ballots floating in limbo right now that need a little action, maybe from you, listener. The official legal election term from this is cured. What's your vibes on that? Does that feel, is it cured like a disease or cured like a delicious salami, like a cured meat? Feelings?
It's cured as in disease. The ballot had a defect, and the defect was either a missing signature or a mismatched signature, and it is cured when that ballot is verified that the voter actually cast the ballot and that voter is a legitimate voter.
See, Stephen, I like to think about it like sausage making. Like we put the elements in, we put our votes on the ballot, we mailed it in, but it needs time, it needs smoke before it can ripen into a delicious, spicy vote.
See, I think it's more like the band because it's a little sad, but at the end, there's some peppy parts.
So we have almost 13,000 ballots still out there that need to be cured, that need to be fixed.
As of the taping.
As of the taping.
Thursday morning.
And that number has come down quite a bit since Election Day when there were closer to 30,000 uncured ballots. So people have been out there doing this work. So this is your wee-oo to do something. Because, yes, the presidential election has been settled. But as we're going to get into later in this episode, we still have some tight races in the state. So your vote really, really does matter. Now, here is what you need to do. So this actually happened to me, fellas, in the primary, and I'm embarrassed to admit that I didn't cure my ballot. I got a phone call and a mail notice that there was a mismatched signature, and I was out of town. I couldn't do anything about it. I think a lot of residents locally also got those signature update cards that a lot of us hopefully returned to. But even when I went in person to vote to make sure this didn't happen to me this election, and I had to sign twice. And the poll worker flipped the screen back to me and said, "You have to do it again. She gave me this whole method, go back to when you were 18, remember what it was like to register to vote." Yes.
You're not alone.
This happened to you too.
Rob Cowcheries.
Oh, he had to cure his ballot. Yes, but he did a mail-in ballot. I was in person, and they were like, "You need to sign it again." Yes, that's what I'm saying. Okay. They're like, "You need to put yourself in your 18-year-old body when you register to vote and sign it like that." Of course, one of the big differences here is that when I registered to vote when I was 18, which was longer ago than most people suspect, I signed a piece of paper. And now I'm signing a digital screen. And we all know those signatures look way, way, way different. And again, when I updated my signature, I signed a piece of paper, not a screen. We're seeing issues with that with Gen Z as well, who are used to signing on screens. And so when they have to sign a paper ballot, their signature isn't matching. And I think that's come off as a lot of Gen Z can't even sign a piece of paper. But yeah, that's how our society is set up right now. A lot of us use screens every single day, multiple times a day, rather than signing checks to pay for our groceries, right? So here's what you need to do. First of all, there's a state's online tool to check your ballot, to make sure if you mailed in or dropped off your ballot, to just give it a check. So just make sure it was received because, as you were talking about Rob, Dayvid, the state didn't have his phone number, so they couldn't call him and tell him there was a problem. So check online, and if you need to cure your ballot, you're going to call 702-455-8683. Once again, that number is 702-455-8683. Give them a call, cure your ballot. It doesn't take very long.
We mentioned Rob Cowcheries, our newsletter editor. He's a super duper smart guy. Is it, like Sarah says, the Gen Zs, or is there something inherently potentially confusing about the mail-in ballots?
Well, no. I mean, let's keep it in context. The original number of ballots that needed to be cured, about 28,000, represents just 4.6% of the overall ballots that are counted. There are instructions that remind you to sign your ballot. It's a big red box and red lettering saying you've got to sign your ballot. But for people who haven't done it before, or for people who have, followed all the other instructions, filled in the little bubbles, put it in the sleeve and done all that, sometimes it just gets overlooked.
I think that one of the things we can say, the reason we have so many uncured mail-in ballots is because we have mail-in ballots. Like, let's give a shout out to the way that Nevada has made voting so easy here, which is so incredible. Everyone gets a mail-in ballot. Everyone is automatically registered to vote. We have so much time to vote in advance, too. It's awesome. And one of the biggest shifts that I notice about this election season, although, of course, these rules are different state to state, is that, 8 years ago, we saw such resistance to mail-in ballots and early voting. 4 years ago, we saw it. And now it feels normalized. And so it's the access that people have is so exciting, regardless of whether or not I'm happy about the outcome of the presidential election. The fact that people could vote in these numbers with this ease is incredible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Without even having required voter ID, it's all working out, and people are having to verify when there is any question who they are with IDs, et cetera. And so, la-di-da-di-da.
Ideal mesmo para o mundo atual seria fazer o ensino médio junto com o curso técnico, certo? É no Senac que o aluno tem autonomia de verdade, formação cidadã, foco na diversidade, preparação para o Enem, material didático sem taxas e muito mais. Na real, tem tudo que você precisa para se sentir preparado para a vida. Seja para entrar no mundo do trabalho ou te ajudar a decidir o que fazer na faculdade. Quer saber? Senac. Vem comigo! Acesse sp.senac.br/ensino-médio-técnico.
A Liberty Seguros agora é Yellon. Tudo aquilo que já era bom continua igual. Excelência e proximidade permanecem como nossa essência. Porque não é uma mudança, é uma evolução. A Yellon está sempre em sintonia com você. É liberdade com segurança. A melhor experiência acessível a todos os clientes. Iluminando cada passo da sua jornada. Deixe essa luz iluminar seu caminho. Yellon Seguradora. Seguro para viver livre. Consulte seu corretor.
Well, so now we have election results, but we're still hanging on updates. Steve, what updates can we give on Thursday morning after the Tuesday election, and what are we still waiting for?
We can actually give some pretty big updates, and that is that in the U.S. Senate race, Jackie Rosen, who was trailing Sam Brown on election night and for the day or two afterwards, has now flipped that race as more ballots have been counted and more ballots have been cured. She's now ahead by 12,000 votes in that race.
That seems a big number to overcome.
It's a big shift, and it is a big number to overcome. Depending on where the rest of these ballots are coming from, that could be a big shift. The state assembly, there were 3 candidates who it looked like had flipped from Democrat to Republican. Those races all now have flipped back. So it looks like there will be a net gain of 1 seat in the assembly for Republicans. The state Senate will remain as it is. 1 Democratic seat flipped to Republican, 1 Republican to Democrat. So there's no net change there. And then Victoria Seaman has conceded the race for mayor to Shelley Berkeley. Shelley Berkeley will be the next mayor of the city of Las Vegas. And the gap is only widening. April Becker will be the first Republican to sit on the Clark County Commission since Chip Maxfield left in 2008, which is quite a long time for that body to have no Republicans. She defeated former Assemblywoman Shannon Bilbray Axelrod for the District C seat there.
I'm not familiar with this race. She must have run a heck of a campaign. We're pretty solidly blue, according to this last election.
Well, county commission's a weird place, and it has been blue for a really long time, but it has not been without people who have been indicted and sent to prison over the last 2 decades as well. And so I think a lot of people were pointing that maybe Shannon Bilbray Axelrod did not run the stellar campaign, but that's always been a tough seat. Ross Miller only won it by a handful of votes even after a recount.
10 votes, went up to 15 after the recount.
And then he did not run for re-election, and so that was an open seat.
Yeah, and that was going to be a tough seat. April Becker had run for office a couple times before. Her name ID was higher than it normally is. And there was a sort of a sub rosa campaign reminding people that Shannon Bilberry Axelrod once registered as a foreign agent to lobby on behalf of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia against a bill that would have allowed the 9/11 survivors to sue the government of Saudi Arabia for damages for the funding of September 11th. Yeah, and that's a tough thing to overcome.
And even harder to get over was the alliteration of Saudi Shannon. That really did kind of stick. It was hard for Bilberry Axelrod.
You know what's interesting about that, David, though? When it happened, in the moment, when it was first revealed, I thought that she would surely draw a Democratic primary challenger, that the Democratic leadership would put somebody in her race against her. They did not. And then I thought, well, surely the Republican in that race is finally going to be able to oust her, because this is a bad thing, siding with the government of Saudi Arabia. And they did not. And then she was reelected a couple more times. And I had thought this issue had just gone away. But it came back in this race, and I think in the present environment, it had some cachet that it did not have in the past. And that was a factor, not the factor. But as David said, the campaign was not a very high profile or, well executed campaign. And so that probably has more to do with it. But certainly the Saudi Shannon signs did not help.
I'm fascinated by the career-ending nicknames and pray that we never have one. Although now I want to get ahead of it and think of my career-ending nickname in advance.
Yeah, well, I should disclose that Shannon is a friend of mine. But that said,
me too.
Objectively, that wasn't the best race. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Nickname can take it all down, right?
Yeah. Well, what local races do y'all think will have the greatest impact in Las Vegas now that we know the results?
I assume mayor, right? Dayvid, you're the one that can speak on this the most, but like the Las Vegas mayor,
Don't assume. The Las Vegas mayor is just one of 7 bodies. While they have a lot of attention to them, I don't know that it necessarily changes a lot in the city.
Yes, that's my point. Because when I go east, when I go back to New York, you know what those New Yorkers say to me? Do you still have that woman, the one that wanted Las Vegas to be a COVID test case? So we have discussed many times on this pod that although the Las Vegas mayor only actually rules a small percentage of our valley, their impact as the face of Las Vegas goes way, way, way further. So I'm interested to see what that means. And also, I'm happy to see Rosen pull ahead. I know it's a statewide race, but I do try to vote on politicians that I think are intelligent, practical, and qualified rather than necessarily glamorous and charming. And I know that that's a part of the whole deal, the personality, but I don't think that actually is what can make someone a good political leader.
Yeah.
Their charm.
Talking about impact, though, like changing the way things are, what do you think, Steve, as far as the local races?
I have always believed that the elected officials that have the greatest impact on people's lives are judges. A single judge can have more sway over your life, especially in places like family court, than any assemblyman, any congressman, any governor can have. They set broad policy, but a judge can send you to prison or fine you or give your children to your spouse. And that has outsized impact on everybody. I would say then, in addition to that, I would say members of the school board, because the Clark County School District has some serious problems. And the way that district is administered affects thousands, hundreds of thousands of children in Clark County, some of whom are very ill-served by the current system that is failing far too many children. So I would say those two are probably the races with the biggest impact.
Well, with the loss of the chair of the school board trustees and the injection of 2 people who at one point or another were affiliated with the controversial Moms for Liberty group, how do you think that will impact the school district, Steve?
One of our reporters at Channel 13 tried to interview the president of the school board. I think it's president, not chair.
Oh, sorry.
And she held up a piece of paper in front of her face rather than engage in conversation with a reporter. The president of the school board is supposed to be the only person who speaks to the media. And anyone else who speaks, they're not either not allowed to speak to the media, or they have to begin with this recitation of, well, I'm only speaking for myself. I'm not speaking on behalf of the board. That's just the start of where things get screwed up. But I think, what I think we need there is less focus on, the books that people are checking out in the libraries and what kind of bathrooms we have in schools, and more focus on achievement, on actually teaching kids things that they're going to need in life and having those kids be able to demonstrate that they know those things to go on to college, to increase the graduation rate, to increase the college participation rate, and to increase the programs that get people good jobs right out of high school. That's what we need to be focusing on. We don't need to be focusing on some of the culture war issues that we've been afflicted with.
Mm-hmm.
So which way do you think that's going to go with this new composition?
I have long advocated that the school board should be a hybrid of appointed and elected members, and that the appointed members be required to have expertise in certain areas, the way we do it with something we take seriously in Nevada, the Gaming Control Board. I think we should take that approach and approach it to education and have someone who has experience in running a multi-billion-dollar organization on the school boards, has somebody who has experience in law, have a classroom teacher who is retired from the district, who knows what it's like to work under the policies that they pass down. Those people should be part of the discussion. And I think the greatest reform that the school district has seen in the past few years, at least, was when the legislature required them to have appointees from local governments, which, of course, the existing school board promptly took away any power that they would have to actually affect change. So that board, I think, really needs an overhaul. And I don't know that this election will produce that, but the need will go on and the proof will be in those numbers. And we're just not seeing it.
Let's talk about the Trump factor. I'm wondering, is Nevada going to be more red for a while, or was it just the top of the ticket, the anomaly of this year's season?
Yeah, I think it was definitely the latter. I think Trump is a unique persona in national politics. And I think it was his personality, his persona that did all of this, combined with the economy and the circumstances that existed here are not circumstances that will necessarily exist in the 4 years from now, 8 years from now. So I think things will change in that respect. Again, the legislature is still in Democratic hands. The U.S. Senate race appears to be in Democratic hands. 3 Democrats, members of Congress, have been reelected. So I think it's premature to say Nevada is red. But what this does show is that a Republican can win the state of Nevada. And we knew that already because Joe Lombardo was elected governor in 2022, and Stavros Anthony, lieutenant governor in 2022, and Andy Matthews, controller in 2022. So the right candidate in the right place, saying and doing the right things with the right set of circumstances can win in Nevada, whether they be Republican or Democrat. But I don't think that Nevada is going to turn red or be red or lose its swing state status going forward.
Yeah. And then there was also the ballot question. Sarah, I know you were following a bunch of those. We did a whole episode where you did an explainer with April Corbin-Gurnis. What's your takeaway from the way that the ballot measures went, or any of the ones that were most important to you?
Yeah, I don't think there are any surprises. Nevada chose to protect abortion. I mean, I think one of the reasons I appreciate Nevada as a swing state is we do tend to go libertarian when it comes to our red counties, and moderate and progressive in our blue areas. And I think that all those people believe strongly in individual rights. Of course, there are other disagreements there, but I think that is a big reason that abortion was already protected by law in the state of Nevada. In the face of a federal ban, we'll see what happens there. I think that the greatest shock and disappointment is that 40% of Nevadans voted to keep slavery in our Constitution as a punishment for crime.
What do you think that says about Nevada? I mean, I'm curious your takeaway of that.
My generous, and Steve laughed, and yeah, Steve, it's one of those things where it's just like so puzzling you can't help to laugh at it. I think that one of the things we talked about in our ballot episodes is that these ballot measures are really hard to read. They're very difficult to parse, which I even had questions of April about ranked choice voting because I didn't understand the way it was written. Nobody understood the way that first question was written about the Board of Regents. So did people not understand the way the question was written, or do they really believe that prisoners should be involved in enslaved labor, which is a genuine issue across the country?
Let me follow up on that, because I think that's the most salient thing about all these ballot measures.
They're hard to read.
And Steve, they're always litigated too. You get these petitions for what might very well be some great ideas that public opinion would be very valuable, and yet they get shot down because of this arcane way that we interpret what can and cannot be on our ballot. Can that be reformed?
That's a tall order because when you propose a ballot question and you write the ballot question, you're writing it defensively because you know it's going to be attacked prior to circulation by saying the description of effect, which is limited to 200 words, is inadequate. And then it will be attacked post adoption for constitutional problems. For example, this voter ID petition, it passed overwhelmingly, and I believe it'll pass overwhelmingly again in 2 years from now. And it will be immediately attacked because they will say that because it requires a fee to get an ID, that is a poll tax, and state of Nevada will eventually have to give away free IDs, which costs taxpayers.
Yeah, that's a great point.
They tried to raise that prior to its adoption, but the court ruled it was not a ripe issue for adjudication at that point. So that looms in our future when this is adopted.
And I am curious to see if that happens because, of course, that is one of the issues with voter ID, making sure everyone has access to an ID. I am surprised that passed by such a large number. I think it's one of those things that feels like it makes sense, but it also just comes from maybe a lack of education about what that would actually mean versus, what the situation is now. But of course, that has to pass again for it actually to be passed into a law. So we've got time to spread that education. I'm also surprised that ranked choice voting and open primaries lost by so much. I see that as an interesting opportunity to move beyond a two-party system and get more voices heard. But again, I mean, the Dems and the Republicans, that's the only thing they were united on, right, is making sure that didn't pass because it would undermine that two-party system. So I would also like to see more education out about there because if you are a progressive or a libertarian and fall outside of those traditional party lines, I do think that that's a ballot measure that would benefit you.
I was asked yesterday if it was just open primaries and we left the general election alone, would it have passed? I think it would have. I think it would have passed if it was just open primaries.
I think people are confused by both things being in that ballot measure as well, even though they are connected.
The story of that is just as we were talking just a second ago about courts and their role in the approval of the initiative process, how the Nevada Supreme Court allowed the log rolling of those two things into one. It's beyond my capacity to understand because I have seen petitions parsed so narrowly, sliced, like thinly sliced prosciutto to eliminate any hint of log rolling. And here, instead of thinly sliced prosciutto, you had a huge log of salami, bringing it back to the salami and made it there with a big block of cheese. And the court said nothing of it. They found that didn't offend the Constitution in any way. So I don't particularly understand it, but that's the way it was. And so you may see somebody try that again, and you may see them try it in two different measures, and maybe one will pass and change the way we do primaries here.
Okay, all very important election results and impacts, but perhaps nowhere is there a bigger impact than what we saw in Henderson over at the Kids Vote 2024 program. That's where kids under the age of 18 were invited over to their city hall with a registered voter. So it was like a, ulterior motive, but they got a free scoop of ice cream to then cast their vote on what the best ice cream flavor of all time is. And so we had a primary where my beloved Rocky Road came in dead last.
Presidential preference primary. They did all three. They really taken the kids through the voting system. It's kind of incredible.
Yeah. So going way back.
Yeah, Rocky Road got like 6 votes, David. Sorry.
I know it did. Then we got down to the primary where there were four flavors with a none of the candidates option, which I thought was quite clever.
I also love that. Yeah.
And then we got down to our final two for the general election. It was between vanilla, the classic, and cookies and cream. And cookies and cream just like basically...
It was a landslide.
Blew vanilla out of the water. It was a landslide. 28, none of these candidates. I would have been there. But 900 votes for cookies and cream. So now cookies and cream, officially the greatest flavor ever, which I think is not true. I think it is a gimmicky flavor. I think it's just elevated vanilla with somebody who, very carefully crumbled an Oreo cookie over it. And I think that's just enhancements. I think that's just an unlawful enhancement.
First of all, that's not how elections work. Just because Trump won doesn't mean he's the greatest president ever, despite what he might say. So this is an election process.
This is why they don't let children vote. Now we have a minimum age of 18 to vote in the United States.
Changing electorate.
So you're with me that cookies and cream is the stupidest one to win?
I completely disagree with the result, and I believe this election was rigged.
Unbelievable.
And many people are saying, David, that this election was rigged, that ballots were cast and that were not proper ballots. There were illegal votes.
Somebody sounds like vanilla.
I think they were feeding these kids free cookies and cream.
And they were violating the law by bribing the children.
With that free scoop.
With the free scoop.
Listen, adults get a sticker. Is that a bribe?
Yes, that's what the stickers.
Actually, it is. The stickers are a big motivator for people.
It is a huge motivator.
Well, actually, what I want to know what you think about this, Sarah, because you obviously, first of all, you are doing a new book on the history of ice cream. So you are our expert on here. I'm going to give you that. But also in the primary, bubblegum made it on, which is not just that's
bubblegum and chocolate. Yeah.
Yeah, bubblegum, which is a blasphemy to me of ice cream. Like, how did that even get there?
That is specifically banned in Leviticus. Absolutely. You're right.
Is. And so I'm going to stay silent, which is hard for me. Sarah, tell me why I'm wrong about cookies and cream.
Listen, obviously I've been following the human election very closely, and it's got me in a bind. But as a culinary historian writing a book about ice cream, oh my God, you better believe I did interviews. I was at the polling places. And this is huge because vanilla has been the most popular flavor of ice cream since these polls have been done. And there have been at least a century of polls. Vanilla's been on the books for about 200 years. Cookies and cream only since the 1960s. Vanilla is often called basic, simple, right? But it is an extremely complicated flavor with only over 200 different smell and taste elements that make it what it is. Now, cookies and cream, David, is actually not technically vanilla ice cream. It is a sweet cream ice cream with cookies, with Oreo cookie-esque cookies in it. Now, I do think this is a powerful metaphor for our human elections.
It's a gimmick, but yes.
Because, we had bubblegum, we had chocolate, we had some outliers out there who can say if they're the progressives or the far-right candidates. But then we had the establishment, vanilla, the one that's been winning the whole time. And I wouldn't call them a new upstart, a 20th century upstart that is vanilla, that is slightly different. And so I think many people would say that is the choice we are offered every election in the two-party system. Vanilla or something slightly different than vanilla. But you know what?
Wow.
Something slightly different than vanilla won at least this election.
That's a mic drop. You have brought what I thought was going to be a fun and frivolous thing into like philosophy, my friend. That was amazing.
I've been thinking about it for days.
I'm going to replay that over and over again. That was so good. I'm going to stay out of this, but I want to do a rapid fire contest of different proportions in food. I'm going to give you both a few food items to go head to head, and then you tell me who wins that election. If you have reasons, that'd be good too. So you ready for the first one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Red Vines versus Twizzlers.
Red Vines, no question.
Oh, God, I'm so indifferent.
Why Red Vines so quick, Sebelius?
Because
why do you hate Twizzlers?
Red Vines are the superior candy. I have actually engaged in a recent debate on this question. Twizzlers are useful if you want to make a candle because they essentially are composed of and taste like wax, whereas Red Vines are actually candy.
Are those the long, skinny ones, Red Vines?
They kind of look alike, but you could tell right away if you got a Red Vine or a Twizzler because one's always going to be more stale than the other. That which is the Red Vines because they're made with better things. Okay, let's go to another category. Cupcakes versus muffins.
Cupcakes.
Yeah, cupcakes. You crazy?
Really? You don't like the fun, fruity stuff that could be inside of a muffin and the
I
muffin
like
top?
a muffin.
The muffin top versus...
For breakfast, but do we want a muffin or a tiny cake? I want the tiny cake.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I thought that would have been more controversial. Let's get the next one.
Bran muffin.
Pancakes versus waffles.
Oh, that is a tough one.
That is a good one.
Yeah.
That is a good one. I think I would go for the waffles, only because the waffles contain tiny repositories that the syrup can accumulate in.
Boom. Yeah, I do think that's it. The last time I was presented with that choice, I chose waffle, again, because it is about the maple syrup, really. It's a platform, literally, for maple syrup. And so I do like that I could fill the holes.
But you don't like the pancake absorption.
I actually don't. If I have pancakes, I put the syrup on the side so I can dip because I don't want it to just soak in and it's gone. It's disappeared.
And they got soggy.
Yeah.
I'm sensing that Steve Sebelius and Sarah Lohman could go have a nice meal together and there wouldn't be a lot of discord.
Let's go to Winnie and Ethel, Steve. That would be lovely.
Yeah, let's, are there any hard ones here, Dayvid? Like, give us a hard one.
Maybe this one. I'm going to try this one. In-N-Out versus Shake Shack.
There is no controversy here. In-N-Out is clearly the superior burger over not only Shake Shack, but all other burgers. And there are some people who might say we need to agree to disagree, but that does not apply in this case because what I'm saying is simple, factual truth. And anyone who disagrees either has no taste buds whatsoever or adopts a wrong opinion intentionally.
I love the passion here.
Steve has talked to so many politicians.
When he's talking about politics, he's very matter of fact. You know, I'm a reporter, but when we get into this food, here comes the real Steve Sebelius.
Yes, absolutely.
I love Steve's his political fascism cosplay. He's very good at it. And I would, of course, have to say Shake Shack because, of course, I'm going to eat an In-N-Out burger. It's fine. Does it taste like anything? I understand the nostalgia. I understand the love. I understand the regionality. I love to see those little palm trees on my cup of iced tea. And, of course, Shake Shack being born in a hut in a park on the island of Manhattan. They are efficient, and I love them, but it's not the same vibe, but it is better food. But neither of them can compete with those smash burgers at Hard Hat. Who's in there right now?
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Your burgers are incredible. They're life-changing.
Wow. See, I'm glad we had that controversy because my last one was going to be something like kale versus cauliflower.
I thought you were going to, so that would be difficult. Like, I thought you were going to say something like foie gras or shark fin soup.
No, come on.
Which would create a morality conflict.
Ooh, the moral question.
Yes.
In addition to, like, it's a conundrum on so many levels.
The answer is cauliflower, though, because if you've ever had like a Manchurian cauliflower, like, come on.
You can do good things with cauliflower that you just can't do with kale.
Although I'm going to tell you, a nice crispy kale on my Yukon pizza is heavenly.
Oh, on a pizza? You can almost eat anything on a pizza.
A kale chip is nice, but most of the time you're trying to transform kale or make it disappear.
All right. We could talk about food and politics forever, and I really desire to talk about food and politics forever with both of you. Sarah Lohman, Steve Sebelius, thanks so much for joining us on the Friday News Roundup.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you, Steve.
Absolutely. Glad to do it.
Before we go, I have a favor to ask. How about telling 3 friends about what we do here, about what we pulled off this election cycle? To recap, we interviewed as many mayoral candidates as we could find in the primary, and then the 2 finalists we interviewed again about a specific issue most important to our city, homelessness. We followed the ballot measures, the judicial races. We interviewed the best and brightest journalists in our city about the issues that matter to Las Vegas voters. And here's what will help us. Just text your friends and tell them about how you use our show to stay connected to our city and community. You could even send them this episode. It would help us a lot to grow our impact in Las Vegas. And at CityCast Las Vegas, we are dedicated to telling our city story with heart, insight, and a focus on the people who live here. No one else covers our community like we do. And we want to reach as many community members as possible. And if you're extra passionate about localism at this moment in history, you could also consider becoming a member at membership.citycast.fm. And thank you. We really hope our election coverage has served you, and we're planning to keep covering those local stories that matter right now, right here in Las Vegas. And that's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. Our interim executive producer is Layla Muhammad. Our producers this week were Myron Kaplan and Lizzie Goldsmith. Our newsletter editor is Rob Catullreese, and our hosts are Sarah Lohman and me, David Figler. Music is by OG Moose, Epidemic Sound, and All the Kimonos. We record this show on the traditional homelands of the Nuuvi, the Southern Paiute people. If you enjoyed the show, hey, go tell a friend, leave us a review, vote for us with those stars, and subscribe to our morning newsletter, Hey Las Vegas. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Till then, stay lucky.